For this, you're going to need to make sure you have your maps. Otherwise, this won't make a lot of sense and you can't label your maps. One of the things we're going to do this unit is to see how the U.S. grew over time. And as we go through this, what you need to do on your map is you need to label the land we're talking about and provide the when, put the date down. You don't have to write anything down about the how. So, starting off, the United States, 13 colonies. These were the original 13 colonies stretching from Georgia up to Maine. Our win is going to be 1776, so add that to the map. And the reason we're starting there is that is when the United States declared their independence from Great Britain. So the United States started out as that. Moving on. The next expansion happened with what was known as the Western lands. And the win on this was 1783. The reason or how we got this land was this was at the conclusion of the Revolutionary War. Once we defeated the British, we sat down with the British in Paris, and it was negotiated the United States would get this area that you see in red. They called it the Western lands. Excuse me. We don't think of this as the West today, but when it's 1782, you're getting land to the west. They called it the Western lands. And this was important. Now we have all the land from, we still don't have Florida, but up to the Canadian border. And our western border is now the Mississippi River. And you can see from this, the United States has now doubled in size. So this is the map, 1880, like I said, Georgia up to Canada. There's the Mississippi River along there. Lots of maps in this unit. So I'll put this map. You can see I did some drawing on this, and these areas that I've shaded in are significant. Let me explain. The big red caret is the Appalachian Mountains. So this is a fairly decent mountain range. I'll talk about why that's important. The blue is the Mississippi River. So we have all the land to the Mississippi River in the east, and your little circle down here is New Orleans. So the main points we're setting up for the Louisiana Purchase. Number one, the year's 1800, about 1 million farmers have moved west near the Mississippi River. And I'm going to kind of go back and forth between this and the map. So let me show you. So, excuse me, before 1800, most Americans were living on the East Coast. They were living on this side where you see my cursor, on this side of the Appalachian Mountains. But as time goes on, there's less and less farmland. More people are coming in from Europe. So people began to push across the Appalachian Mountains and settle in here. And this was extremely hard to do. This is 1800. The only way to get across the Appalachian Mountains was a horse or walk. The roads weren't good. It was dangerous and it was difficult. But by 1800, there's 1 million people settled kind of in this area with my cursor, and they are farmers. Okay, these farmers that are living west near the Mississippi River, they're going to rely on the Mississippi River to get their crops back to the east. And I'll show you again on the map. Whoops, I went the wrong way. Sorry. Okay, so let's say I'm living here. Today, this is Illinois, and I'm a corn farmer. And in the fall, I harvest my corn. Now it's time. I got to get it back to the East Coast because this is where all the people are that need the food. So I have two options. Really, you only have one option, but in theory, you have two. I can load up all my corn in one wagon, which probably isn't doable. And then I can have my horse pull a wagon all the way across the Appalachian Mountains to the East Coast. Farmers, this wasn't an option. This was too long. It was too dangerous, and you couldn't do it. So what they were doing instead is they were loading up their corn. They were taking it to the Mississippi River. From here, it would be put on a barge, and they'd float the barge down to New Orleans. And once it got down into New Orleans, they would transfer the corn to a larger boat, and then the boat would go down all the way around Florida, come up the Atlantic to one of the big cities on the East Coast. That was the only way to get your crops back to the East Coast. And the reason why, fewer good roads, and it was quicker to do that journey down the Mississippi River around Florida and up the East Coast. That was your only option. The only problem with all of this is Spain controlled the Mississippi River. And if I go back, they didn't control the entire river. Spain, all this land over here where my cursor is, this is all Spanish territory. So they controlled the Mississippi River, even though we are bordering it. And the reason they controlled the Mississippi River was because of that circle at the bottom, New Orleans. Key to the Mississippi River was New Orleans. If you had control of New Orleans, you controlled the entire river. Think of New Orleans as they're the gatekeeper, and the gatekeeper controls what goes up the river, what goes down the river. You control New Orleans, you have the entire Mississippi River.